Mac Power Users, episode 709. Save your shift key. Hello, everyone. This is David Sparks, joined by my friend and yours, Mr. Stephen Hackett. How are you today, Stephen?
I'm great, David. How are you?
Oh, man, it's Apple season. We're going to get new iPhones in a week. Actually, a couple days after this thing drops.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun time of year for me. I always love to see what they do. And we're heading into that. The weather's cooling off. It's all good, brother. It's all good. We are I didn't mention, by the way, we're the Mac Power Users. We're here to help you become power users of your Macs and all other things Apple. Let's get into real quick, Stephen, about next week. So we've got a couple things going on. First, Stephen's got some great news.
Yes, I will be attending the iPhone event. So this is my first invite to an iPhone keynote. I've been to WWDC a few times, and that's really exciting. And I love going to WWDC. I love the energy. We've talked about this. The energy at WWDC is so good.
It's amazing.
But I will also be attending this. So I will be in California for a couple of days next week. We're going to record the next episode of MPU while I'm there. And that episode will be coming out on hopefully Wednesday is the hope. So it'll be out just a few days after this one.
Yeah, exactly. Since Steven's going to be in the room, hopefully get hands-on. We want to get that report out as soon as possible. So next week's episode will drop probably just a few days after this one.
Yeah.
So make sure to get them both. 2 per week. I will be, as usual, in Johnny Ives' white plane, circling over Cupertino, as we'll be watching it on his big screen. He called me. He said he's got the beta Apple TV that never shipped in his plane now. So We're going to go watch it on that, which will be cool. But I will also be in the Discord for the MacSparky Labs, and I don't know, probably a few other places. But if you're in the labs, make sure you get your Discord sign up. It's part of the labs membership for everybody, and we can all be talking in there about the stuff as it goes down. Maybe Johnny will step in and say hello once in a while too. I don't know. I don't want to promise. Johnny's a little fickle. He's a little fickle.
Yeah. You don't want to write a check that he's not going to cash.
Yeah. I was supposed to go last year, and I started talking to him about how I don't like any of the Apple Watch faces, and he just disinvited me. He's like, well, then don't come. And so last year I had to watch it at home. But this year I told him that I really thought the faces the utility face was still the best. And he's like, yeah, I agree. You can come. So that's what happened. Either way, man, I'm so happy that you're going to be there.
Very elaborate conversation.
Well, this is, you think this is fictional, but this is true. This is totally true. Yeah, Johnny and me, we're like that. But I think it's awesome that a Mac Power User is going to be in the room at the Apple Phone event, so that's going to be really good. And and I really can't wait. We've got a lot of announcements. We're going to do a segment today with kind of the summary of the rumors as the show publishes. But it's not long. We'll get all the real story from Apple, and I can't wait.
Yeah, so we have all that going on. The day of the keynote is actually 512 Pixel's 15th birthday, which means a lot to me.
Really, that's impressive, right? 15 years later, you're at Apple Cupertino in the Apple Park watching the keynote.
So we have all that going on. Briefly, I just had a couple questions about where my Kickstarter is at. So the 2024 Apple History Calendar is at the printer as we speak. They bought the paper a few days ago, so it'll be on the press probably while I'm in California. And those will start shipping out in October. So if you are a backer of that Kickstarter, you should have gotten an email from BackerKit in the last few days getting your address and if you want any add-ons. So if you don't see that, check your junk folder, or if you can't seem to find one, reach out to me and I can get you hooked up.
Yeah. And also I want to thank everybody who bought the Obsidian Field Guide. I've had lots of great feedback. As I said in the show, I was a little nervous because it was such a tough nut to crack, but I think I got it. Everybody's that's getting it is really happy with it. And as this show publishes, it's the last day of the introductory price discount, but I am going to leave the MPU discount, which is Obsidian MPU. I'm going to leave that turned on for a couple extra days. I'm not going to tell anybody else about that. So even though everybody else is getting shut down on Sunday, you guys have a few more days, and then I'll shut that one down too. But Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. And I love making field guides. I don't know how else to put it. And I love that those emails I get from people saying that it's helping them figure something out and do something. There are so many listeners doing important work, way more important work than I do, but they're using the stuff I teach them to do it better. And, that makes me sleep well.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Today on More Power Users, I am considering a 3D printer. This has been something that's gone off and on my radar for a long time. I can make a case for it and against it. I'm definitely not in the bag for one, but I like the idea of one. And Steven has owned one for some time, so we're going to talk about that in More Power Users. And I was thinking about it as I got on the mic today. I'm like, why would I have Steven help me make this decision? He's like the world's biggest enabler. So we'll see how this all goes.
Yeah, how's your Mac Studio, buddy? Is it good?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I love this computer. So you led me right there. But it's also September, which is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And, Relay, we've got this long relationship with St. Jude. Stephen has personal experience with St. Jude. They helped him and his family out a great deal. And this is the month to give. And I kind of like that it overlaps the Apple event because we're all talking about spending money on stuff. But, we can also give some money to people that need it. If you go to stjude.org/relay, you give them money and they help cure children of cancer. They help take care of their family. They're a huge research hospital. And we've got it's over 2.2 million in past contributions from Relay listeners. Mm-hmm. And how are we doing this year so far, Stephen?
So as we record this on Tuesday, September 5th, we're at 163,000, which is over halfway to our goal. Our goal this year is 293K. That's a weird number, but that gets us to the 2.5 million over 5 years. Obviously, we're hoping and honestly expecting to blast through that 293. But the generosity of the entire Relay community has just been out in force this year. We are ahead of where we expected to be at this point in the campaign this year. And it's really awesome. One of my favorite things that we get to do is have people in the community start their own fundraisers as part of our campaign. And there's been a lot of this in the Relay FM member Discord of people talking about what they're doing. So we have someone who mows a lot of grass, mows a lot of yards for people. And they're like, if you donate X amount, you can get your initials cut into someone's yard, and they do a time lapse of it. It's really cool. People doing video game streams and all sorts of stuff. And if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to fundraise on behalf of St. Jude in partnership with Relay FM, if you go to stjude.org/relay, there is some resources there to help you get set up. And if you do your own fundraiser, you're eligible for this really cool challenge coin. It has Mike Hurley on one side and me on the other. And if you raise $250, you get this really amazing desk pad that has, again, Mike and I on it. All sorts of stuff. There's employee matching, which is a huge deal. There's donor advised fund giving. So there's lots of ways to give this year. And you may be wondering, okay, what does this money actually do? Well, let me share some numbers with you. So St. Jude opened in 1962. Back then, childhood cancer was largely considered incurable. We talk about the moonshot idea. This was a moonshot in 1962. And today, in the years since, treatments developed at St. Jude have helped push the overall cancer survival rate from 20% to 80% in kids since opening. That is amazing in what is relatively a short period of time, but 80% is not 100%. Pediatric cancer is still the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. kids ages 14 and younger. And we all believe, St. Jude, Relay, we all believe that every child deserves a chance to live their life and celebrate every moment. So that is why we do this, because this money goes towards research and treatment. And like what David said, they take care of the family. So travel, housing, and meals are all taken care of for you as a St. Jude family. And as a dad who went through this with my oldest son, Josiah, was diagnosed with a brain tumor at 6 months of age, St. Jude saved his life and also kept our family going through this great community they have and all the support they have for families. And so it means the world to us that the community gets behind this. So you want to go to stjude.org/relay. It's the top link in the show notes this week. donate, find out how to fundraise, set up employee matching. Lots of great stuff there. And if you have given, thank you so much. There have been so many of you who have sent me little notes or things on Mastodon or Instagram, other places. Thank you. It really, what I get out of this is not a lot of sleep during the month of September, and I get so encouraged by people who from around the world who believe in this mission and want to help kids that are in the situation our son was in 14 years ago. And so that means the world to me. So please visit stjude.org/relay.
I feel like, Stephen, because Mickey Mouse is paying, he's matching us this year because awesome. Daisy got full time. And so if you do have a full-time job and your company matches, just remember, you double your money. So this is great. But I was just looking at this thing where you can start your own campaign and thinking about, we have so many listeners that are in like Mac user groups or, community technology groups of one flavor or another. I feel like this would be great. If you're out there and you're running one of those groups, why not do that? It feels really good giving. And if you could kind of coordinate that for your group, you can really be a force multiplier for this, for this great cause. In fact, I was thinking, Stephen, about offering some other kind of like goal for people. I was thinking, I feel like in the MPU listening audience, we probably have some LARPers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what a LARPer is, right?
I do, yeah.
So if we have a LARPing group out there, I'm going to throw this out there, Steve. You tell me if you're good with it.
Oh boy.
We have a LARPing group.
Okay.
That can raise $50,000. Me and Steven are going to LARP as Avatar. We're going to paint ourselves blue. How's that?
That's quite the statement you've made. But
yeah.
Let's see how that goes.
I think that's a yes. Anyway, let's talk about Mac Power users. We got a lot going on. Feedback episodes are always some of my favorites. Let's start with listener feedback. Pierre-Luc wrote in, I am a junior developer looking to start development on the Apple platform, and I was wondering if a 15-inch MacBook Air with an M2 would be sufficient for my needs. Yes, it would. I feel like we've talked about this before, but the biggest beneficiary of the Apple Silicon generation is the low end Macs, because they now hit benchmarks that would have been a MacBook Pro a little while ago. And granted, it would be faster if you spent $3,000 on the super, high end MacBook Pro, but you are going to be just fine on that. And good luck to you, Pierre-Luc.
Yeah, the Air is such a good machine. I think I shared this on a feedback episode, but I got to spend some time with somebody I was helping set up a 15-inch MacBook Air for them. And I really walked away very impressed by that machine. The size is great. And when you think about a 15-inch laptop, I think about like the old MacBook Pros. It's like, sure. This is not that. It is really thin and light, but it's 15 inches. It kind of has the same feeling. Maybe the first time, if you've ever experienced a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, where the screen real estate versus the thickness and weight don't quite make sense. Like, how is this so light? I was really impressed with the 15-inch Air, and I think it would be an excellent development machine. I think you're really going to like it.
Yeah, when I was up in Cupertino for WWDC, I did a 4K video for the labs on my 13-inch MacBook Air, which is also M2. And it did great. I think it probably did it faster than my old iMac Pro would do. And granted, my fancy Mac Studio is faster and better, but honestly, I could get by with a MacBook Air myself. It's just such a great computer and at such a great price point. So I think you'll be just fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Paul wrote in with a open source alternative to Grammarly. So we were speaking about Grammarly on a recent episode and how both you and I use it to check things that we're publishing for grammatical mistakes or typos, that sort of thing. I still make typos and grammatical errors, but I do make an attempt to run things through Grammarly. And so Paul wrote in about languagetool.org. There'll be a link in the show notes. So this is open source, but there is still a paid premium version of it. But my understanding in reading through their material is they have their sort of their engine available for people to look at and tinker with. It's got everything you would expect. So browser extensions, a Mac app, and more supposedly coming soon. There's a free version that does basic grammar, punctuation, and style checking. So I set up a free account and I had my Grammarly account, which I do pay for, but I had them side by side. I pasted in the same blog post I was working on to both of them, and they were very close in what they suggested I change. I feel like Grammarly was a bit more stylistic in some of its suggestions to me, but also I've been using Grammarly for years, and it may be that it knows a bit more about me, right? I also have settings in Grammarly for like I don't write with the Oxford comma, to the chagrin of many people, and so it knows, okay, that's not an error. That's how this joker writes. And so there were some differences, but I was very impressed with how close they were.
I'm sorry. So you use the Oxford comma or you don't?
I do not use the Oxford comma. Please don't send me an email about that, dear listener. I know.
I don't know if we can continue the show.
It got burned into me in college, like.
All right. I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that. So, but you think it's as good or in the ballpark, right?
Totally in the ballpark.
Moving on. We're moving
totally
on.
In the ballpark. Yeah. You get 10,000 characters per file in the free version. And they have the thing that Grammarly and basically everyone else does now where you can have Chat GPT or something like it help you with your writing. Premium starts at $4.99 a month. The only thing I don't like about their pricing is that it's only $4.99 a month if you sign up for 2 years. And I feel like that's a big commitment for a service like this. But if this floats your boat, or maybe you like something about this more than Grammarly, it can be a lot cheaper. Grammarly can get kind of expensive. And so I think if you're looking for something like this, take them both for a spin. They both have free plans, and you can kind of see what fits with your style better.
The bigger question for me on this, and this is something that is really, to me, sinking in on all these AI platforms, and there are so many. Someone just turned me on to an app for the Mac called Monica, and it's an AI engine that runs Bard and Chat GPT and images. It's like a face for all of the AI engines you can run, and it's a nice Mac app. But it's like all of these are like, how many of them are going to be around in a year?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I feel like it's like the streaming services. Everybody's got these ones now. They're competing with each other. The services that Grammarly gives me, I pay for Grammarly. I really like. But will Chat GPT and things like Monica fold Grammarly like power into them in the next year? So if you pay for 2 years of this other thing, are you going to feel like you don't need it in 2 years? I'm really interested in these apps, but I'm getting all of them on a monthly basis, because I feel like every month one of them may fall away. But it's an interesting time to explore with this stuff. But I don't think really the big players are sorted yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you have that, and then I think you also have the what is it going to be good for in the long term is also a bit unknown.
So I used AI with the field guide for the transcripts. I used Mac Whisper, which is a local AI app on the Mac, to pull the transcript from the audio recording. And then I used Chat GPT to add legitimate paragraph breaks to it. Mm-hmm. But all that was AI generated. It's the first time I've done all that via AI, and overall it did a pretty good job. But but that's different from asking it, questions and trying to get it to do write a transcript for me, like write a script for me, if that makes sense. So I haven't got to that point with AI yet, but there's a lot of interest out there, and we'll definitely be covering on the show as these tools emerge. Maybe we'll even commit a show to it next year. But it's an interesting time, and it's like there's so much overlap, with them. If it's a grammar tool or a general AI or LLM model, it's just very interesting times to see what's going to kind of emerge from all this.
Up next, we got some feedback from our friend Shelly Brisbane. If you don't know Shelly, you totally should. She does amazing journalistic work in Texas, and she has a show on Relay FM called Parallel that focuses on technology, but with sort of the sprinkles on top, as she would say, about accessibility. And she wrote in about a alternative to Plex called Kodi, Kodi. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it is a platform very similar to Plex, but it is all open source. It has kind of the same structure where you have a local media server and then you can access that content remotely. And it has what's cool about it, and one sort of under the open source umbrella, is that you can develop your own plugins for it. And so she shared that her husband wrote an add-on that plays random movie trailers based on their local library of classic films, along with some other things. So that's pretty sweet. Plex is controlled by sort of an organization, right? They're a company behind it, and with Cody and their open source community, it's obviously a little bit of a different approach. So we had Casey on and focused on Plex as just part of his sort of overall media stack. So we really didn't explore Plex alternatives, but it is good to know that they're at least one cool one that one of our friends likes.
Yeah. Stephen wrote in to complain about the lack of bootable backups in today's Mac OS era. And he was referencing the Carbon Copy Cloner website about Apple making it proprietary and everything they were going about it. I know you have thoughts on this. How upset are you about this lack of independent bootable backups?
I really go sort of round and round on this. And so some background of this is that Stephen wrote actually in their feedback was, with recent versions of Mac OS, Apple separated the Mac OS system, like the actual OS, and your data. And through the magic of APFS, they're actually on separate volumes. Now, we don't see them as separate volumes, right? If you double click Macintosh HD, it's all in there together. But under the covers, they are separated. And they separated them years ago. And now the way that it works is that the system is a read-only volume that is cryptographically signed by Apple. And from a security standpoint, that is fantastic. That means that software you download, either meaning to or not meaning to, that they can't alter the way that your Mac OS installation works, right? That's a fantastic thing, I think, from a user perspective. Where it gums up the works a little bit is on things like bootable backups. And so on Carbon Copy Cloner's support site, I'm going to have a link directly to this in the show notes. It is that complicates things, right? Because those volumes are not as not as approachable as they used to be. And so back in the day, you could do a bootable backup, right? So I could have a FireWire drive that had my installation of OS X, all my data on it. If my iMac died, I could plug that into my MacBook and boot my MacBook as if it were my iMac, right? An extremely useful thing. But in macOS Big Sur and later, once they started sealing those signed system volumes, they can't be copied by non-Apple software. And that is a bummer if you rely on a bootable backup. But at the end of the day, and this may be controversial, I think I'm okay with the trade-off. I think for most people, having macOS set up in a way that it can't be tinkered with, it can't be altered in a way that would cause issues from a security standpoint, and that's such a big win. Those people, including myself, who used to rely on bootable backups, that there's a trade-off we have to live with. I think it's helped by the fact that it's actually very easy to get a new macOS install up and running because you have like internet recovery and local recovery, all these things now. And because macOS is signed and cannot be tampered with, the need for a bootable backup is greatly diminished anyways. Really, the reason you would need this now is a hardware failure. And in the world of SSDs, we've gotten rid of like 90% of hardware failures being old spinning hard drives, right? So I think the need for bootable backups has gone down. I think the number of people who rely on them has gone down, and the security that this new system offers is better. And so, yeah, it kind of stinks, and I get it. But I think overall, I'm okay with the trade-off.
I guess I'm kind of with you. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Even in the battle days when I needed a bootable backup, it was always a temporary thing. Like if things went sideways on me and I had to boot from an external drive, it was only running off that external drive long enough for me to get a new internal drive formatted and the data moved over anyway. So it's a short term, and I get, the problem that it solved. I'm sure Stephen would, if he were here, he would say is like, yeah, but you got it running immediately, because your internal drive died. You can just attach the bootable backup, and in 30 seconds you're back up and running. And I get that, but that's not. I don't do anything time sensitive enough to make that big of a deal. So yeah, I think they made the right decision overall. And like you, I understand it sucks. I'm not trying to diminish Steven's complaint. I think he's absolutely right. But when you look at what you're getting in return, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah, everything's going to have trade-offs, right? The second that they started locking down the system, it meant that things were going to change. Now, could Apple have gone a middle road? We're like, yes, we are cryptographically signing and sealing Mac OS, but you can still clone your volume and make it bootable. Like, yeah, probably. But I would imagine that either the complexity with that or the overhead that brought, they didn't feel was worth it. And look, I still run a nightly clone of my machine every night at 2:00. I guess every morning at 2:00 a.m. My Mac wakes up. My MacBook Pro wakes up. It mounts a bootable, or not a bootable. Gosh, that's the whole point of this. It mounts an external drive and copies all my data over to it. And so if something happens to my MacBook Pro and I have to replace it or reformat it or something, I can restore from Time Machine, or I can restore from that Carbon Copy Cloner backup. Or if if the pod cabin gets hit by an asteroid, I can go out to Backblaze and get my data. So I'm still a fan of multiple tier backup, even if we've lost the bootability of those backups.
Yeah, in fact, I'm using Carbon Copy Cloner more than ever now that I have one primary drive. For a lot of my old backups, I used to use an app called ChronoSync, which was really good at grabbing data from different places and doing comparisons and, just backing up the difference. Well, Carbon Copy Cloner does that even better if you've got one drive to one drive. And now that I've got all my data on one drive, in addition to the 3 a.m. backup I do every day, I also have a couple spinning drives that I attach, every month. And I keep one off site and one local. But Carbon Copy Cloner runs all of that for me now. It really is nice when you have a gross amount of data on your internal drive. It makes all that stuff so much easier. But we feel you, Stephen, but it is what it is.
Yeah. This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by Text Expander. With Text Expander, you get your team communicating faster so they can focus on what's most important. Because with Text Expander, their knowledge is always at their fingertips. Get your whole team on the same page by getting information out of silos and into the hands of everyone who needs to use it. You can share your team's knowledge across departments so your team is sending a unified message to your customers and not spending time reinventing the wheel. So here's how it works. You store your company's most used emails, phrases, messaging, URLs, and more right within Text Expander. Then you share it, getting your whole team access to the content they need to use every day. Organize it by department and let them expand it, deploying the content they need with just a few keystrokes on any device across any apps you use. It really is that easy. Text Expander is available on Mac, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, and iPad, and I can tell you confidently my Mac feels broken without Text Expander. I use it for all sorts of things, little things like setting dates and times for file names, but also much more important things like commonly used support phrases and URLs when I'm dealing with Relay's membership. Or a lot of things for my shows, repeating text, like in the Mac Power Users notes, we have that bit about the newsletter and the forums. I have that in Text Expander, so I can deploy it confidently each and every week. As a show listener, you will get 20% off your first year of Text Expander. So go to textexpander.com/MPU to learn more and sign up. Once again, that's textexpander.com/MPU for 20% off your first year.
All right, Stephen, we talked a lot in the last month about window management, and that brought in recommendations for apps we didn't cover and other workflows. It's no surprise that every person listening to our voices has a different window management system, but I think they're all interesting, and I like sharing them. Some of the more interesting ones we had. Several people pointed out that we didn't cover John Syracuse's app,
Yeah,
front and center,
including John Syracuse himself. Yeah, so John has two apps. He has Front and Center and Switch Glass. Switch Glass is effectively a customizable app switcher. So it's kind of like the dock, but it's also kind of like the old application menu we got in like the classic Mac OS, where you could pick from all of your running apps. I think Switch Glass's strength is that you can customize it to Kingdom Come. Like all sorts of customization is available with Switch Glass, and you can use it with or without the dock, or have your dock on one screen and Switch Glass on another, whatever you want. But I think Front and Center is the more traditional window manager, and even then, it's not really a traditional window manager. What Front and Center does is it lets you change the way macOS brings apps to the front. So if I have 3 Safari windows open and I'm in Finder, if I click Safari, whatever window I click comes to the front. The others stay where they were. And that's the way macOS 10 has always done it, but some people want the way that the classic macOS did it. And if you run Front and Center and you have it in classic mode, then if I'm in Finder and I click any of my Safari windows, all 3 of them come to the front. Now, I used the classic macOS, but not nearly as long as John and other people. And so the way that macOS 10 does it feels natural to me. But if it's never felt right to you, then John is here to make it better.
Yeah, and his apps are really nice. I bought them both.
Me too.
I just don't use them. I've got to try and use them more. I'm sorry, John.
He's on the show coming up, so we can talk to him about this.
I gotta get it together here.
Yeah,
it's cool. The dock location is a constant battle for me. Do you struggle with where to put your dock, or you just know where it belongs?
It's always on the right, and that works out for me because my MacBook Pro is always open on the left side of my studio display. So I don't have the issue of like, oh, it's in the middle. It's just mine's always on the right-hand side and always visible. So it's always just hanging out over there.
Well, I use multiple spaces, so it really makes more sense to keep it on the bottom, but that is some pretty valuable real estate at the same time. So it's tough. I usually put it on the bottom, and occasionally I put it on the side until it causes a problem when I'm dragging something or whatever. And then I frustratingly put it back at the bottom.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Well, there's more though on this stuff. There's a couple of open source apps that help see what space you are in via the menu bar. One is called Which Space, and the other one is called Spaceman. I didn't know about either one of these.
I didn't either, and they came up in the excellent forum thread on this over at talk.macpowerusers.com. So Which Space basically gives you a little box with a number in your menu bar, and that corresponds to what desktop you're on. So if you go into Mission Control, you'll see like desktop 1, 2, 3, however many you have. And then this little UI element corresponds with what desktop you're on. Now, Spaceman builds, it actually builds a top Which Space, because they're both open source and someone just forked it and made a change to it. Spaceman does the same thing. So it puts a thing in your menu bar and it tells you what space you're on. But what is clever about Spaceman is that you can name your spaces. So if you have a communication space and a productivity space and a media space, you could name them and have that name show up in the menu bar. So if you wanted a little visual reinforcement of what you're supposed to be doing in that space, you can have that. And I think that's pretty interesting. I only use 2 desktops on my main display and 2 on my laptop display. So I don't get lost very easily. But if you're a big Spaces user and you kind of feel yourself wandering around a little bit, one of these two apps may take care of that for you.
I sure hope Apple adds some of these features to the shipping version. Since we recorded that, I've been doing a thing where I'm actually using the thing I made the most fun of during the show, and that's Apple's own split screen stuff. Simply because it puts the names in the Spaces view where you can see what is what. And there's a couple that I've settled on. Like I put messages in Slack on one page together, and I put music and podcasts and mail and Discord. There's a couple of them that are natural pairings that I've just been leaving running. And I found that actually worked better than I thought. Just because I made so much fun of it on the show, I thought I should try and use it. And I can see where this is okay. It's definitely limited, though. I mean, we need more of this stuff. And window management is, I think, an itch that always needs scratching.
Mm-hmm.
We also heard about an app called Warp. It's at warpmac.com, and it lets you set up different workstations with open apps and windows and choose between them quickly. Kind of contextual computing.
Yeah, I think this has a lot of contextual computing possibilities. The way that it works, I think, is pretty neat. So the way you set these up is you arrange your windows manually, and then basically the app, you tell it, hey, save this as a preset. So whatever apps, wherever they're on the screen, whatever's hidden, whatever's minimized, and then you can name that. You can name that preset and give it an icon, and then you can select them moving forward. And of course, you can edit the setups that you have. So I played with this for a bit before the show. I think it's really cool if this is the way that you work. My window management tends to be much more ad hoc than this. That's one reason I really like the way Windows does it, honestly, because I can just kind of build up and tear things down as I need. And this is more of a, hey, I'm going into this mode. So if you're into the contextual computing, I want these windows open this way every time I sit down to do X task, then Warp looks like a really strong contender for that sort of workflow. It doesn't fit the way that I work, but I think it fits the way a lot of people want to work. And I think the cleverness here is, again, saving that preset based on what you've done on the screen. A lot of these apps that we talked about, you kind of enter a different mode, right? Like you have a grid or you have this outline and things pop into place. That's great. That's what I prefer. But if you're more visually oriented, you can lay all these out, maybe even with those other tools, and then save the whole thing as a preset altogether.
Yeah, I think Warp makes sense if you're not into Spaces and you just want the main screen to reconfigure itself for you. I want to dig into this a little bit. Did you see when you went through it, can I set up specific tab pages in the Safari as well?
I don't know if it goes that far into it. I think it's mostly at the window level, but you could maybe combine that, with things like tab groups or even the what is Apple calling it? It's profiles in Chrome. Maybe that's what Safari's calling it too. But the different sort of profiles you can have in your browser. So this, I think, is basically just the window level. But you could pair it with other things for sure.
Yeah, I still wish, I just had it in that show, but I wish that we had better tab view, tab group automation. I mean, we don't have any really.
Yeah. Maybe next year.
This is a good one. I love it when the feedback teaches us new things. I mean, that's really great,
Me too. And we said it on that episode. It's impossible to round up every app in every app category that we cover, right? We do our very best to hit as many as we can. And sometimes, your favorite thing falls through the cracks. And that's why we have the forums, right? So we can follow up and provide feedback on them later. So thank you for sending those in. Warp looks like a real contender.
Speaking of learning from a listener, Paul wrote in with something I had no idea. We talked about Command Tab.
Mm-hmm.
We Command Tab and it goes left to right across your group of open apps. And then if you hold down the Shift key, it goes backwards, which is kind of a pain, right? You got to get another finger involved. Paul wrote in to point out that if you hit the backtick key, that it goes backwards. So Command backtick, which is right on top of the Tab key, it goes right and left. when we were researching that show, I went to the Apple keyboard shortcut page and to the Apple explanation of Command Tab and got all the ones we talked about on the show. This was not listed. I don't know. Maybe this is like a really old Mac keyboard shortcut that I just wasn't aware of and they left in. But thank you, Paul. I didn't know that, and it's so much easier.
And to be clear, you have to hit Command Tab first, and then you can reach up, because on its own, Command Backtick cycles through open windows in any application. So again, if you have 3 Safari windows open, Command Backtick will just cycle between the 3. But if I hit Command Tab and then Backtick, then I'm moving right to left. And of course, if you run your Mac in a right to left language, I don't know what happens in Command Tab in that situation, but it may be reversed for you. I don't know. But this is something that I knew, and like when we were just putting this together, it just like wasn't in my brain. It is really old, I think. I feel like it's been around a long time, but I use Command Backtick all the time because I very often will have multiple, especially browser windows open, if I'm working on a couple different things at once. And I find that to be extremely useful just on its own. But yeah, combining it with Command Tab saves your shift key from wearing out.
Yeah. And David wrote in that he likes to trigger mission control with a hot corner. And that's where you can set in the settings, you can set hot corners to do various things. We didn't talk about it too much because my preference is a 4-finger swipe up on the trackpad, but everybody's got their own thing. My concern with hotkeys, frankly, is every time I set them, or the hot corners, sometimes they just trigger when I'm not expecting them to, and that's vexing. But yeah, hot corners are there. I'm sure there's some listeners using them to great effect.
Yeah,
but I don't use them much.
I only use one, and it's the same one I probably set up in like high school and just have never changed it. Top right corner for a screensaver. And I don't find that super annoying because I don't have it require a password for like the first 2 minutes or whatever, like the lowest one is basically. So if you have it require a password immediately, boy, that hot corner would be annoying. But I like to be able to just chunk my mouse in the upper right-hand corner when I get up and the screensavers start. But yeah, I don't use it for mission control. I much prefer either F3 if my hand is on the keyboard, or the 4-finger swipe on the Magic Trackpad. Generally, if I'm in mission control, like, I'm already kind of primed to do some gestures. So I feel like that's a pretty natural thing.
Yeah, and the hot corner to sleep, I used to use that, but since the Touch ID keyboard showed up, I've disabled that because I find when I'm walking away from the Mac now, if you just press down on the Touch ID button, it locks your computer up for you. And actually, the screen goes dark almost immediately for me. That's why I can never stop using these Apple keyboards.
Yeah, Touch ID is too good.
We got all these buddies that are into these mechanical keyboards. I bought one, and I finally found a use for it, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Oh, okay. David also mentioned the shortcut Snap. It was actually named the best Mac shortcut by Mac Stories in 2022, their Automation April series. And this is basically, it's a shortcut that combines all of the window management stuff that Shortcuts has to offer. But I think we probably said this in that episode, but I'll say it now. It's great that Shortcuts has all that, but a lot of these apps go so much further. And I view the Shortcuts window management stuff, like that's nice if I'm doing other things in Shortcuts. Like maybe I don't want to use Warp. Maybe I want to set up, open these apps and put them here in Shortcuts. Like that's great, but the third-party stuff I think is a lot more user-friendly and flexible.
That article you mentioned also has the greatest meme related to you I've ever seen.
I haven't looked at this page in a long time. Let's see. Okay, so it's the guy walking with a woman, but he's looking at another lady who walks by, and it's me in the middle. 6,000 2019 Intel Mac Pro, and then I'm paying attention to when I shouldn't, Mac Studio with Apple Silicon.
Well, there you go, Steven.
Yeah. Mac Stories guys, they know me pretty well.
It's out of date though, because then you dropped the Mac Studio with Apple Silicon for another Mac. So,
yeah. The 14-inch MacBook Pro, man, it's great. Next week going to Apple, I can just have my whole computer with me. What a concept!
Yeah, I mean, if Tim runs up to you and says, "Quick, Steven, we need a press release from 2002," you're like, "I got it, Tim."
Yeah,
just open up DevonThink and print it out.
Can't do that on a secondary MacBook Air.
I'm pretty sure you'll be the only one in the room that has access to that.
Yeah, probably. I don't think it's going to come up.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by SaneBox. Bringing sanity to your inbox. You can sign up today for a free 2-week trial and get a $25 credit. Just go to sanebox.com/MPU. SaneBox is like that Batman utility belt, but for your email. Anytime you have a problem with email, SaneBox probably has a tool to help you get out of it. And the beauty of SaneBox is it doesn't need to be a proprietary application. Instead, you can apply the SaneBox tool belt to any email application that you use, whether you're on Gmail or Microsoft or Apple Mail or whatever. So what are the tools on that tool belt? Well, there's things like auto sorting. So when things land in your inbox, it figures out whether it's important or not. If it's not important, it puts it aside so you don't have to be flooded with it when you wake up or the next time you check your email. It also checks for attachments and files them to your Dropbox if you want or wherever else. My favorite feature is the way I can blind copy SaneBox and it will keep up with that email. If someone doesn't reply to me, SaneBox will remind me. I used to have a really complicated task manager workflow for that. Now SaneBox does it for me. You can also defer email with SaneBox. So if you want to put it off until Saturday or next Wednesday or next month, you can do that. I often get emails from people who really want to try SaneBox, but they're nervous about the security. Well, security is a major concern for any product I personally use. So trust me when I tell you SaneBox is secure. They look at the subject line and the person that sent the email. They don't look at the contents of your email. They never take possession of your email. They never download the bodies of your email. They can only see the subject line. Even further, if their database and code base were stolen or got hacked, your credentials and email would be protected thanks to their multi-layered bank-level encryption. The CEO has gone on record saying they will be as secure as possible and they will never profit off your data. This is something that exists to be a tool to help your email, not to market you. I can tell you email for me sometimes is a challenge, but what is always a help is my little SaneBox Batman utility belt. And if you haven't tried it yet, you can up your email game today. Just go to sanebox.com/MPU. You get that $25 credit so you can try it for free. And when you start using it, you'll get hooked. And you won't be alone. Most Mac Power users that try SaneBox end up signing up for SaneBox because it's just so powerful. So what are you waiting for? Rescue your inbox today with SaneBox. The URL one last time is sanebox.com/MPU. And thank you, SaneBox, for all of your support of the Mac Power users.
So we have this topic in here. The title of it is David's Modern Typewriter. What have you done?
I have a story. I have a little story to spin. In fact, I think I'm going to turn this into a YouTube video at some point because it's been a really fun experiment for me. But I was talking in the labs about thank you notes at one point, and I was thinking, it might be fun to type those. Like my handwriting's okay, but it would be fun to send typewritten thank you notes. And then a labs member in the Netherlands, of all places, said, I have a typewriter for you if you want it. So for the cost of shipping, I got this typewriter sent to me. It's a German Olympia typewriter from 1955.
Whoa.
And it's a trip, man, because the Y and the Z letters are switched because it's made for German folks where the alphabet's used differently. And it's had, it's in great shape. I don't know all the stories that have been written on it over the years, but it's kind of fun having it. And I've actually sent a few thank you notes out with it. But it got me thinking, using it, that I do kind of like the unitasker, no interruption method of typing. But this typewriter is great for making thank you notes. It is not something you could write a blog post on, But
I'm just imagining you using a typewriter for a blog post, and then you mail it to someone on your team to put it on your website.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
This is the minimal writing machine, right? I've talked about this before. This concept of I want an old power book that I can just open text edit and write markdown in, and it always fails because inevitably I need the internet.
Yeah. And so I started looking into it, thinking, well, maybe this is something I need to explore more. And my friend Mike Vardy has the Hemingway typing device. Have you seen this thing?
Oh, I'm well aware of this. Their Instagram ads follow me around.
Oh, are they? Yeah.
They know who I am.
It is a and first of all, kudos to Hemingway for the name, right?
Yeah.
It's at hemingwright.com, but it's kind of like a steampunk looking thing with a mechanical keyboard on it and a small LCD screen, and it's got a couple levers on. They've got a couple different versions. They have like a more compact one and a bigger one, but the idea is it's kind of like a traditional typewriter, kind of what I was talking about, like a unitasking typewriter. And then this thing has some ability to share the data over, and but largely if you want to just write and not be interrupted, this is kind of where you go. But they're not inexpensive, right?
Yeah.
They're in the $600 range, but they've got different versions, a little less, a little more. But I thought that's a lot of money, and I don't think this experiment is worth that to me. The other thing is I used Mike's when we were at a thing together, and I didn't think the keyboard was that good. You know what I mean?
That's the whole point of this thing. Come on.
Right. It just, it's fine. I don't want to like badmouth them. I'm sure I have listeners that love them, but it didn't feel special. It's not that it was bad. It just didn't feel special. Like when I'm on this Olympia, it feels special when you type on that keyboard. And and also I just want to spend any money because I'm thinking about buying a 3D printer, which we're going to talk about later. So I said, well, could I make one anyway? Could I make a modern typewriter? And the other thing that is weighing in on this is now that, one field got it shipped, the next one is already, hot on me. And this next one I've been working on for like 5 years. I'll tell you more about it on the show in the future, but it involves a book. It has a book part of it. And I'm using the term book loosely. It'll probably be about 150 pages, but but I want to do more typing on that. And I thought, well, what could I do? So I've got an iPad here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a clicky keyboard, which I mentioned earlier, and I thought, well, what could I do with that? And obviously it's not that hard to Bluetooth pair an iPad and a keyboard together, but then it's still an iPad and notifications and everything are coming in. So I decided to just make that iPad as dumb as possible, right? I wanted to silence it from the internet, which is easy enough. You just go into airplane mode, and then I wanted to, turn off the notifications, turn off everything that could interrupt me on it, and try and get it to a point where it's really just kind of like this Hemingway device. It's a screen with a keyboard attached, and I have a writing desk. So I have 2 desks. I'm very spoiled. And so I thought, well, I've never had a digital device on my writing desk, but this is almost not a digital device at this point. So I turned off all notifications. I turned off all the radios except for the Bluetooth radio. And I put it on the desk. I've got it on a little stand, and I've got the screen on always on mode. Okay. So when I turn it on, it's just turned on. And so in the morning, if I type on it, usually in the morning, I try to write a little bit. I just leave it on all day. So then when I walk past it, it's just sitting there like a piece of paper and a typewriter saying, hey, you left off somewhere. You want to come back and continue. And you do. You sit down and you find yourself writing some more. And it's been really working out pretty good as a little thing. So I'm writing this book for this next field guide almost entirely on my little modern typewriter.
No, I love it. I mean, it makes me think about that original weird iPad keyboard dock, which was kind of the same idea, right? You put the iPad down in portrait, it had a 30-pin dock connector on it, and you could just go to town typing away. And the iPad is, if you set it up correctly, which sounds like you have, it is a really good writing machine. I want an external keyboard, as I think most people would want. But because you can sort of pare it down and do one app full screen, and yeah, you can do that with the Mac, but there is something nice about an iPad in that in that way. I've never been super successful with it, but my writing usually involves 5,000 browser tabs and about 3,000 PDFs open because I'm doing all this research, and like the iPad just isn't good for that. But I think for the type of writing you're doing, or the type of writing a lot of people want to do, having an iPad at the center of it, really stripped down, no notifications, just the apps you need. I would say ideally even using an app that like auto syncs in the background so you don't have to deal with file management. That's compelling.
Yeah, so what I do is the sync isn't possible because it's all disconnected.
Yeah, you have it in airplane mode.
Yeah, but whenever I want to, I just turn off airplane mode and it syncs over. But then it goes back to being, a modern typewriter.
Yeah.
I went ahead and shared a picture with you. We can put it in the show notes. In the picture, I've got it unplugged, but usually during the day, I have the thing plugged in. So it just can keep the screen on all day. And that was a little touch to it that I didn't really think about doing initially, but I really like. It seems to really like, there's something attractive, almost magnetic about it when it's sitting there looking at you. Mm-hmm. I do get that, like when people would leave a piece of paper in their typewriter. Finding an app, that was a challenge for me. Like the first thing I did was I said, well, Tom Hanks, he's the big fancy typewriter guy. And he has an app called Hanks Writer. So I tried that for a few days, and it's too clever, if you know what I mean. It's like it wants to be like a typewriter on your iPad, and they even have like on-screen keyboards that look like old typewriters, and they go to a great effort to give you a typewriter-like experience on something that just isn't a typewriter. And I just felt like it was just too clever. It wasn't for me. I have been using Drafts because that's always my main app of choice for writing text. But I've also tried AI Writer for this. I bought an AI Writer license a couple years ago, and I do like their native font.
Yeah,
I'd like to try and figure out how to get Drafts to match that font. I haven't figured it out yet. But
IA Writer, they have those fonts or at least they used to. They have those fonts available for download, so you can use them anywhere.
Oh, really? I should check that out. But it's really kind of nice. And so, I'm just using this clicky keyboard. I think I'm going to go like harder on this and put at some point some even firmer switches in it. Mm-hmm. Just embrace it for what it is. Because I've always felt a little guilty owning this key. I had a couple of these keyboards and I gave them away, but I kept one, and now I think I found a use for it. And it works just fine. I can keep my Apple keyboard in front of my Mac where I've got Touch ID and the dictation button and a bunch of stuff that's not on these other keyboards. But yeah, it's been working out pretty good. And, I think I've got something like about 20,000 words written on it in the last few weeks. So it's good. And, it's fun to work at that desk with a typewriter, I don't know how to put it. And I'll go back to my Mac, and there'll be notifications and messages and things out there waiting for me. But while I was at the little modern typewriter, it worked just fine. I think this is very bespoke. It's kind of entitled nerdiness. Not everybody has a job where they could set up a modern typewriter and they have distractions ignored. But if you do, and if you got an old iPad around, it doesn't cost much to set the thing up. As long as you've got a keyboard and an old iPad, you're good to go. This is not taxing to the iPad at all. I mean, you're running a word processor on it, or I guess a text editor, not even a word processor. And, but it's kind of a fun experience. I'd recommend giving it a try. Well, if you do try it out, let me know.
Yeah, I've got that picture in the show notes, but I think you should make a video out of this. I think people should be able to see it that way.
I've got it. If you look at that picture really close, you see the first couple paragraphs of a script.
Awesome. This episode of MPU is brought to you by ZocDoc. Have you ever been on the hunt for a new doctor and you ask everyone you know for their recommendation? I mean, it makes sense. You want a doctor that gets you, listens to you, and makes you feel super comfortable. Finally, after weeks of searching, you find the one. They meet all your requirements and then some. So you call their office and they have an appointment available. Then you find out they don't take your insurance. Don't worry. Head over to ZocDoc to find and book the perfect doctor for you and one who takes your insurance. ZocDoc is a free app where you can find amazing doctors and book appointments online. We're talking about booking appointments with thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed doctors and specialists. You can filter specifically for those who take your insurance, are located near you, and treat almost any condition you're searching for. These doctors all have verified reviews from actual real patients, not robots. The average wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between just 24 and 48 hours. That's it. Some days, you can even get same-day appointments. Once you find the doctor you want, you can book them with just a few taps immediately. No more waiting awkwardly on hold with the receptionist. I love this service because it is really hard and challenging to find a new doctor. Maybe you've got something new going on in your life, or you've moved, or you made some other change. ZocDoc is a great way to get your healthcare back on track. Go to ZocDoc.com/MPU to download their app for free, then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc, ZocDoc.com/MPU.
All right. We always try to finish up before a Big Apple event with some rumors. We always focus on this show being signal over noise. In this case, we make an exception, usually heading into the iPhone event, because it's fun to talk about the rumors. And as this show drops, we've got a few days left. There may be some shocking news dropping even between the time we record this episode and the time it drops. But I think we've got a pretty good handle on what's coming. So why don't we just jump through it now? If you like surprises at the Apple event, you don't want to hear it, then I would recommend you go ahead and skip to the next bit in the chapter markers. But let's get into all this Apple stuff and what we think we're going to see.
Yeah. If you want to hear a lot more, last week's Connected 465, I went through all of these with Mike and Federico like for an hour and a half. So there's a lot more. And on Upgrade, they've been tracking these as well. But let's start with the Apple Watch. Historically, we should say, with rare exceptions, the September event is iPhone, an Apple Watch, and sometimes an accessory or a service thrown in there too to round it out. But I feel like iPhone and Apple Watch feel like a lock. We'd be looking at the Series 9.
Yeah, and historically they start with a watch. They end with the phone.
Yeah, the phone is the band you came to see, and the Apple Watch is the opener, which has its own fans. Some people show up for the opening band, but we're here for the headliner. The Series 9 seems like it's going to be like the Series, I would say 7 and 8. Probably not a super compelling update. One thing that I think is floating out there is that the main Apple Watch line has used basically the same system on a chip for 2 or 3 years now, and so that may be looking at a revision this year. There's a story out there that the Apple Watch Series 10 is going to be a pretty big year for the Apple Watch hardware. So this one I think is going to look pretty much how the 7 and 8 look. And they'll remix some new finishes and maybe some new bands in there. But I think the Apple Watch Series 9 is going to be the watch you get to upgrade from a Series 4 or a 5 or 6. And if you have a 7 or an 8, I think it's probably not that huge of a bump.
Yeah, agreed. This is the one they need to deliver. If the rumors are true about next year, the 10 being the big change, this will be the last of this model. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rumors of an SE that I've heard. So I don't think we're going to get an updated Apple Watch SE this year.
No, and the SE has been an every other year at least, and it just got an update. So I think the SE will just sit. I would like to see the SE get a price cut because I think it's still too expensive. So maybe we would see that. But if you're in the market for an Apple Watch SE, like a new one, I don't think it's going to be anything for you in a few days.
Yeah. The Ultra this year, they'll be back with a version 2. And the rumors act like that's a surprise. To me, that is expected. I feel like the Ultra is part of the line now, and I feel like we should get an update for it every year. And there's no rumors of a small one. That's the question I get the most from listeners and readers is like, do you think they'll make a small one? I've seen nothing to indicate they will. There's a lot of people out there with smaller wrists that want the Ultra watch, the action button, and the additional features, but the size is the limiting factor for them. My guess is battery life is really the problem. Like the Ultra is sold to be a long-term watch, that you can use over multiple days and hiking, and you get much smaller case. The battery life is going to pay a price.
I think that's exactly right. I expect the Apple Watch Ultra 2 will get whatever system on a chip update comes to the Series 9, if any, and maybe a new dark titanium finish, which I know some people would be interested in, maybe to match a darker titanium iPhone Pro, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the Ultra's a year old. I think it's definitely going to get an update. It's silly to me they would let it sit. What are they going to do? Like rev it at 18 months or 2 years? That doesn't make any sense to me for their most expensive Apple Watch. I'm not looking to update my Ultra. I'm super happy with this watch. Mine is still in great shape. The battery life is in great shape. So I'm sitting out this year on the Apple Watch.
Yeah. I'm very curious how you make black or dark titanium. Like, is it a coating? Is it
I can tell you all about this. I can tell because Upgrade went through this whole thing. You can anodize titanium. It's a slightly different methodology than anodizing aluminum, but it can be anodized. So,
that's good.
It should
so
be.
It's not going to scratch off.
Yes, yeah. When people think, oh, gosh, they're going to paint it like they did the titanium PowerBook 20 years ago. No. Like this would be anodized. This is not a coating or a painting. It's not quite like the stainless steel PVD coating, in my understanding. That's like a totally different process, but it would be anodized in a similar fashion to Apple's aluminum Apple Watches.
Well, like you, I love my Ultra watch. When I did that survey from Max Sparky and from the newsletter, 1,100 respondents, 20% of them own Ultra, and they all love it. I mean, it's people that buy it, once you separate the money out of it, it is a very satisfying watch. That extra action button makes a difference. Even the Wayfinder faces that it gets are just really nice. And, I got in a lot of trouble with Johnny last year complaining about the faces, right? So I just feel like it's a great watch, and I'm glad that they're going to make a dark one. Hopefully at some point they'll make a smaller one, but I would like to see this continue. I was talking to a friend of the show, Liana Lehua, over the weekend, who is a very active person. She hikes and does all that. And she's been seriously looking at the Ultra versus something like a Garmin. And she was telling me the Garmin now has a thing on it where they put like a solar band around the face that helps kind of keep the watch charged when you're on long hikes. And she was saying, man, if Apple adds a solar band to the Ultra, then Garmin is going to be in big trouble. But I don't think they're going to go that far. I think Apple's idea is, bring a battery if you're gone for more than a couple days.
Yeah. And they got the low power mode. Like they're doing what they can without fundamentally changing the product.
Yeah. And it's a big difference between a Garmin hiking watch and an Apple Ultra watch. Either way, I agree with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the new dark one if it's indeed coming. Like you, I'm totally happy with mine. Not going to be. I'm giving that money to St. Jude this year, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I do want to say though that I think one area the Apple Watch Ultra has been a little bit of a letdown is in the band selection. Now you can put any Apple Watch band that's of the bigger two sizes on an Ultra. I think it looks a little bit weird, and I have one of each style of Apple Watch Ultra band now, and they haven't revised the colors and they haven't had any other options. And so I think that could be one way that they say, hey, the Ultra 2 is here. Maybe the default band is the same, but maybe they have some other options. I think that there's room there, but at the same time, there's also rumors that Apple's looking to remove leather from its lineup. So leather Apple Watch straps and leather iPhone cases may be going away as we speak. And so that may limit some of what they would do there. But I think there is room for them to continue to push on bands that are really made and fit really well with the Ultra, both in terms of fashion and how it looks, but also sort of the idea like more rugged, more tough, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the rumor is that we're going to get like a fancy fabric and magnetic buckle in lieu of leather. So that I will be curious to see that. And that would be for any of the Apple Watches, not just the Ultra. But, even I think the Ultra Watch band choices they made are pretty cool. The rubber one,
Yeah.
the light Velcro one, and I don't know what you call the other one with all the loops on it, like the orange
trail
one.
loop, I think.
Yeah, and my orange trail loop got filthy, but I just finally got frustrated with it, and I sat there one day and watched YouTube for like 30 minutes with some Dawn dish soap at the sink, and now it looks almost new. I mean, you can clean it; it just takes some work. But yeah, I'd like to see them make even just more color variations of the ones that of the styles they have would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I have a link in the show notes. Our friend John at Mac Stories wrote a piece basically saying this last month, and I think that piece has a lot of good points.
All right, so let's do an interlude before the iPhone on the AirPods. All right, AirPods are actually in really good shape now. They've got, the AirPods Pro in particular are amazing. They've got, I think all the AirPods are going pretty good, except they all have a Lightning port on the case. And that may be something that is going away at this point. Where I guess we'll tip our hand that one of the big pieces of the iPhone is it's going to get USB-C instead of Lightning. So we're going to get an AirPod case with a Lightning as well.
Yeah, I think that's all we would see from AirPods. The AirPods Pro 2 aren't that old, but they did this before when they added wireless charging to the phone. They also created a wireless charging case, and you could upgrade your AirPods, or you could just buy the case, right, and swap them into the new case. And so I think we would definitely see that. The only other thing I can kind of point my finger at is like AirPods Max are hanging out there. They've never been updated. They're too expensive for what they are, probably. I don't know what's going on with that product. Maybe that gets some attention too, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it is the time of the year because the other thing, in addition to being new phones, it's we're headed towards the holidays, so a lot of times stuff like that does get announced now as well.
Yeah,
but let's get to the main act here, the iPhone, iPhone Pro. The rumor is it's going to get titanium to match the Ultra Watch.
Yeah, and I think critically, it would weigh less. The steel is heavy, and I think it would not only make the phone lighter, which would be great. It's definitely something I want, but it would change the appearance of the phone as well, right? We've had sort of this look now, really since the iPhone 10. It was the first one with the stainless steel sides, and they've flattened it out and made it square edges again. These may be actually slightly rounded again. They slowly just move between round edges and square edges, but titanium, I think, would be a nice material improvement to the Pro phones, bring the weight down, especially in a year where it's rumored that at least the Pro Max or the big phone would be getting something akin to a periscope lens. So you could really have a long throw optical zoom option. Those cameras add weight, and batteries are heavy in big phones. And so anything they can do to offset that is more than welcome here. Now, what the colors are going to be, how exciting the colors are going to be, who knows? Apple's never done a particularly exciting job on the Pro phone colors. And while titanium can be anodized, are they going to be conservative with that the first go out? I don't know, but I'm excited about.
Yes, I'll tell you right now. This year's iPhone Pro is going to have boring colors, and the iPhone Pro 3 years from now is also going to have boring colors. They have beat me into submission on this. I don't know. They put the fun colors on the iPhone and they put the boring colors on the iPhone Pro. Yeah. One of the big rumors is the new color is going to be gray.
Yeah. Titan Gray, I think, is the rumored name.
Yeah, whatever. And honestly, I'll probably get it because I actually like gray. But man, wouldn't it be nice if we got like some nice vivid colors on our iPhone Pros? But no, I think it's going to be. In fact, if the rumor are right, it's like there's like a white one, like a space gray one, a blackish one, and just a gray one. It's like the three shades of black or gray, and white. So it's
no gold, which is going to make some people sad.
Yeah, the gray is supposedly replacing the gold, and so yeah, that's a bummer. But I'm very happy about the titanium switch. I think lighter is better, and there's something that feels to me richer about titanium. I love it on my watch. I think I'll love it on my phone too. It'll be hard for me to put a case on it. The other rumor about the iPhone Pro Max is that it's going to get a periscope lens. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who never heard the term before, the problem with these phones is they're so thin, right? And so you've got the lens, which usually pokes out a bit. They've got that lens kind of bump on them. And then you've got the sensor behind the lens, which captures the image. And, there's physics involved. And the more distance you can put between the end of the lens or the front of the lens and the sensor, that gives you a lot more power, especially for zooming. Mm-hmm. Well, if you only have a quarter of an inch or so there, it's not much space. So a periscope is the idea of where the sensor would be inside the phone. Instead, you have, a 45-degree mirror.
Yeah.
And then it shoots down a tube. And further down in the phone, you've got the sensor pointing up towards the top, like a periscope. And with that, you could get a much better zoom lens. And the rumor is we're going to get a zoom lens in this thing on a periscope lens. It's going to have a lot further reach than 3 times and be better quality.
Yeah. And we've seen this. Some Samsung phones have this, I think, to a pretty great effect. My questions are will we still have 2 or 3x as an optical option? And then, 5 or 6, or are they just going to skip over that range? There may be some weird middle ground there that we lose. But
I think you could crop it maybe,
and that's how they do 2x now. Is 2x is actually cropped. But all of us have taken pictures of our kids playing soccer or something at some other sports event, or we're at a fair or a parade or something. We zoom in really far, we take the picture, and we look at it, and it's like a blurry mess of pixels, right? Because we're so far out beyond the end of optical zoom using digital zoom. And I assume there will still be digital zoom past whatever this periscope can do. But the further in you can get with optical, it's going to look 1,000 times better. And only being on the big phone, it's a bit of a bummer if you don't want the big phone. But I think there's 2 reasons for that. One, they can absorb the cost a little bit better. But this thing is also going to take up space in a phone, right? You're talking about a little tube of light going through the phone. And the Pro Max, has the most available space. And so it does look like this is going to be one of those years. And we have them every once in a while where the 2 Pro phones, or 2 phones in general, have different cameras, right? They've done that before and they've not done it other years. This looks like it's going to be one of those years where if you want the best possible overall camera system, you're going to be getting the biggest phone, which is fine by me. I carry the biggest phone now and really like it, but that is going to be a point of contention for people buying. I know that our friend Casey has said this, that he's over the years been pretty against carrying the biggest size phone. It's if this is as good as we think it could be, it may push him up a size category. So I think that will be something people have to contend with.
Yeah, well, he has kids, so the zoom lens is helpful.
It's huge, man.
The standard lens has always been good on the iPhone, and it just gets better every year. But I've always felt like the delta between the zoom and the standard lens is so noticeable that I almost never use the zoom lens. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, might shrink that delta to the point where zoom lens is something that you're happy to use.
Yeah.
And even if it means that you don't get the 3x, you've got to crop down to it. I am totally okay with that. I hope this is for real, because I've been reading about periscope lenses for 5 years, and I've always wanted the iPhone to have one. Mm-hmm. So I hope this is the first of many periscope lenses that the iPhone gets in the coming years.
Now you are, if I remember correctly, you are not using the Pro Max this year.
I'm kind of agnostic. I've used the Pro Max on some years, and I've used the standard ones on other years. And the way we do it in our families, I just hand it down. My kids never, and my wife never get new phones. I always get the new one, but then they kind of work their way through the system. And so they sometimes influence me. Dad, I'd really like the standard one. I don't want the big one. So I'll get the standard one one year. When they have parity, I'll usually get the standard size one so the kids can see it. To tell you the truth, I've got the Max this year. I prefer the Max. I've kind of come around on it. I read it enough that extra screen, the extra pixels help. And in the mid 50s, being able to read text on a bigger screen is easier. So I'm generally would buy the Pro Max every time. Although once in a while my kids get to me and I buy the smaller one for a year, and I don't hate that either. They're fine. But if the camera is better on the bigger one, I will always buy that one that year.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I mean, it fits in my pocket. It's fine. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, standby. It looks even better as a standby screen because it's a little bigger. So I don't know. I'm fine with the big one and periscope lens. Sign me up. I'm in. Periscope lens plus titanium. It's kind of a big year. We didn't mention that the bezels are supposed to be smaller too, so that'll be nice.
Yeah, it could be really. It could be a cool year for the iPhone.
Yeah,
for the Pro.
How about the regular iPhone?
It looks like the regular phone will retain the aluminum. It's going to retain the basic design of the outgoing 14, but it will get the dynamic island as opposed to the notch. So it'll look new with the dynamic island and pick up those software features, which I think is enough. I think they're also going to do the thing where the new processor goes in the Pro phone and the old processor goes down to the standard phones. I think they will continue to do that. And I think that's fine. I think most people don't ever think about what's in their phones because they're all fast enough all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And I just think that's going to be the new thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially because another thing we didn't mention is it's supposed to be a 3-nanometer processor in the Pro, which is smaller, which means it uses less power, but it's more powerful. So yeah, I think Apple would rather just make those for the Pro phones and not have to make them for all of the gazillion phones they're going to make this year. Okay, we mentioned earlier USB-C. So Apple has had Lightning ports in the iPhone for a long time, 10 years, I guess.
Yeah,
you have in the show notes.
11 at this point.
11. Yeah. All right. So it seems like just yesterday. I hated that 30-pin connector. Old timers listening to the show will remember it was the world's worst connector. I felt like it would be more useful as a weapon than a connector. and then also it had you had to get it in right side. Not there was a wrong way to put it in. Yeah. It was just a terrible connector.
Yeah, I mean it debuted on the iPod in 2003. It was old when they it wasn't old when they put it on the first iPhone in 2007, but the time they got rid of it with the iPhone 5 moving to Lightning, it was old. And Lightning brought so many obvious improvements. Obviously, way smaller connector, but the biggest thing was the thing was reversible. You didn't have to worry about plugging it in right way up. It was great.
And yet everybody lost their freaking minds. I remember. I mean, I had because everybody in my family knows I love Apple stuff, and they were calling me up. Your Apple is making me spend money to buy cables. This is a money grab, blah, blah, blah. And it was on the news. And it's like people went crazy. The Lightning port was better than that 30-pin connector in every conceivable way. And people still lost their minds. So I'm wondering, Stephen, are we getting ready to go into that again?
Yes, but not to the same degree. I think there will be people who find this annoying because they've got to replace the cable in their car or whatever. But I think it's less of a big deal for 2.5 reasons. The first big reason is that we already have USB-C in the world. USB-C has been on the Mac since 2015. It's been on the iPad since 2018. It's been on a bunch of Android phones since the mid 2015, 2016 era. USB-C is everywhere. Lightning was brand new and only Apple's iPhone used it. Now, eventually it came to the iPad and, the last couple of iPods, they eventually got there and now it's on the keyboards and mice and everything else. But on day one, your iPhone used this weirdo proprietary connector from Apple and nothing else used it. But now we got a USB-C on a bunch of things. So I think that's the big reason is USB-C is already out in the world, has been out in the world for whatever it is, 7 or 8 years, and it's been great.
Yeah, and you can buy the cables at a convenience store. You don't have to get them from Apple.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that helps.
Yeah. And you'll probably get a USB-C cable in the box. Second reason I think that it's less of a big deal is that people don't plug in their phones as much as they used to, right? We have wireless charging, we have MagSafe, we have wireless CarPlay, we have iCloud backup, and I don't know the last time I plugged my phone into a computer. It's been years. Now, I know that's not true for everybody. I know there are people who back up to Finder or still sync manually. Like, I get it. But the number of people who do that is smaller and smaller every year. And really what this has become is a power plug, not data. Now, the reason I said 2.5, the half reason is cars, right? That a lot of people charge with a wire or use wired CarPlay. Even in my truck that has wireless CarPlay, I prefer wired CarPlay because the wireless charger in my truck stinks, and wired CarPlay is still faster. Like there's less of a lag when you're trying to do something. So my truck has a wireless charger, but it's not a horizontal one where you lay the phone down. It's at I haven't measured it, but it's at like a 60-degree angle. And so if you go over a bump or you turn, the phone moves a little bit because it's not resting on the charger and there's no magnets, right? It's just Qi charging. It's not MagSafe. And the phone moves a little bit. And then you get across town and your phone hasn't been charging. I've really found it to be frustrating. But a lot of cars have USB-A or USB-C ports. So if it's got a USB-C port, you just put your new cable in your car and you're good to go. So you might have to buy one cable for your car. So I think most of the complaints are going to be on the philosophical level. Like, oh, Apple's always doing this. Never mind that it was 11 or 12 years ago. Oh, Apple wants me to spend more money, even though there's probably a cable in the box. So I think there will be backlash, but I think it will be lessened from what it was. And so I personally am extremely psyched about this. I cannot wait to ditch Lightning for my life. It's going to be a little while because I use Apple's keyboard and trackpad, and I'm not going to go out and replace those with USB-C versions, but next time I need a keyboard, I will. But that's no big deal. I can keep a Lightning cable in my desk drawer. But when I travel, my whole system can go to USB-C. I can put a USB-C cable in my car. Now, where I will personally find it frustrating is that in my wife's car, it is only wired CarPlay. And I drive her car, a fair amount. Now, her phone, she doesn't care about wired versus wireless CarPlay. So I have her phone set up in my truck just to be wireless. But I'm going to have to stash a USB-C cable in her car to use with my phone because she's on an iPhone 13 mini and refuses to give it up until the universe makes her because she likes the small form factor. So I will have one Lightning phone and one USB-C phone to contend with. And I guess in those environments, it's going to be annoying. But as an individual, I'm psyched about this.
Yeah, it just occurred to me because my wife and I share a car and it has wired CarPlay.
Yeah.
And so this year she's getting my old phone, which is a Lightning phone.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to run CarPlay when I drive, I'm going to have to switch the cable.
Yeah.
And every time I get to my destination, I'm going to need to switch it back. It needs to be for her a thing where she never has to change the cable.
That's on you, dude.
She's coming for me. Yeah. So I just realized that. So that's going to be inconvenient.
Yeah.
You said you want to travel just Lightning. Does that mean that you're going to buy the new AirPod or whatever?
Or just USB-C? Probably. I mean, I want to rip the Band-Aid off. And I know a lot of people I love MagSafe, but when I am traveling, very often, especially my phone, I'm in my room for 30 minutes to eat lunch.
Yeah, you need charging faster.
As fast as I can get it. And so I don't travel with any wireless charging stuff. It's like actually the thing you talked about where it's a wall multi-plug thing, but it's also a battery thing is brilliant. Yeah. And that's all USB, no wireless for me when I travel. So I will do the AirPods case just so I can fully ditch Lightning out of my travel kit.
Well, my guess is it'll take me a couple of years to kind of transition to all the USB-C stuff. But with the Lightning phone still in the family, in the cars, it's going to be a pain in the neck. There's going to be a rough transition. This means that next year I need to convince my kids to let me give my iPhone 15 to my wife because it'll make my life easier.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a tough sell, I think. But yeah, that's coming down the road for me. Well, it sounds like a big year for the iPhone Pro in particular.
It does.
And I can't wait to see it. And you're going to be in the room. You get your hands on it. You can share it with the audience very shortly thereafter. So we've got a lot to talk about next week. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Electric. Unbury yourself from IT tasks and get a free pair of Beats Solo 3 wireless headphones when you schedule a meeting. Just go to electric.ai/MPU. When leading your small business, it's not all glamour. In fact, sometimes it's a matter of spending hours onboarding an employee, which you're well equipped to deal with, but maybe you don't have the time. The team over at Electric knows small businesses, maybe like yours, face these challenges. That's why they're on hand to help with the time-consuming parts of your business, like standardized device security with best-in-class device management software, so you can implement best practices across the board and be ready to scale, and employee onboarding and offboarding done for you, saving you an average of 8 hours per request. That's a lot of time, gang. Plus, Electric will help you keep a single point of visibility into your IT environment to control your devices, networks, and applications, while simplified reporting allows you to achieve and maintain compliance, and proactive IT recommendations and automated workflows make IT easy to manage for even non-technical users. And if you're hearing this and you think your company could use some of these services, but you're not sure where to start, Electric's experts will guide you through the process of establishing standardized IT practices for your organization. I know what you're thinking. You're a Mac Power user. You can handle this. You can onboard people. You can set up their Macs. And that's great that you can, but that doesn't mean that you should. It's really a problem when you're trying to run your business and you try to double as your IT person. You need to spend your time making the big decisions and not setting up Microsoft Word. Boy, there's times in my career I sure could have learned that lesson, and you should too. So for Mac Power Users listeners, Electric is offering a free pair of Beats Solo 3 headphones for taking a qualified meeting. Just go to electric.ai/MPU. That's electric.ai/MPU. Go there now to get your free pair of Beats Solo 3 headphones for scheduling a qualifying meeting. And our thanks to Electric for their support of the Mac Power Users.
So let's wrap up with some things that we are playing with. And you've been over there building a typewriter, but I've been busy.
Yeah, I know.
I have been busy rebuilding my media setup directly after that episode with Casey a few weeks ago.
Did he get to you?
He did. So I had, for years, I've had a Mac Mini under our TV for a couple of reasons. I do it for Time Machine server stuff, which I actually wrote a blog post about this past week. I'll put in the show notes. But I use it for a DVD player because my kids still watch some things on DVD. And I like having an always-on Mac. It's just useful to do that, especially now that I'm a laptop user full-time at work. And sometimes my laptop is in my backpack overnight, and maybe I need something to happen. So I replaced my 2018 Mac Mini, which was like the base model. Actually bought an M1 Mac Mini from Jim Metzendorf, the editor of this very program. Hello, Jim. I bought it from him months ago, and it's just been sitting because I was like, eventually I was going to swap it out under the TV, and I just couldn't find time. I was like, okay, we talked about media management. I've got this Mac Mini sitting in a box. Now is the time. So there's a photo in the show notes you can look at. I just went to town. So I have this M1 Mac Mini, which I think is a base model. It doesn't have very much storage, but it's fine for my needs because I'm using everything externally.
Yeah, you have plenty of storage attached. I'll just tell you
that is
a spoiler.
12 and a half terabytes of storage attached to it. So
yeah, so I see you got 500 gigabyte Samsung SSD, I think. All right.
Yeah.
Then you've got some OWC gear. I don't know what's in those.
Yeah, each one of those has a 4 terabyte SSD in it.
Oh man, nice.
So
nice.
I had some SSD, and I know how this sounds, but I had some SSDs on the shelf from my Mac Pro days that I sort of consolidated stuff when I went to the 8 terabyte SSD on my laptop, and so these like literally were just sitting in a drawer. I was like, okay, I have these, and I had set up Plex a long time ago, and for our episode, I got back into it and it was just it was a mess in there. So I said, you know what, I'm going to start over. So I installed Plex from scratch on this new Mac Mini, and I finally did the thing that I wanted to do for years. I took my just mountain of Apple videos from that I've downloaded over the years, and I put them all on Plex. Now, I think there's like 2,500 items in there. I have so much organization work to do, but I'm just going to chip away at it, little by little to get things in playlists and metadata and all that stuff right. But that's living on one of those SSDs that gets cloned nightly using Carbon Copy Cloner, and it gets backed up to Backblaze. And then one of the other enclosures has a 4 terabyte SSD in it that I set up for Remote Time Machine for the 2 laptops that my kids use for homework and schoolwork. And they're not going to plug in a drive, right? But I can set up.
That's the only way to do the backup is Remote Time Machine for
do it over the network. So all that is set up, and it's running through a 5-port OWC Thunderbolt hub, which I had not come across before. But this hub was $129. All Thunderbolt stuff's expensive.
That's cheap, actually, for a Thunderbolt hub.
Yeah, but it's exactly what I needed. So it's 4 Thunderbolt USB-C ports, a couple of USB-As, and 60-watt charging, which I don't actually need. But it's pretty awesome. So I can just have all those SSDs plugged into this thing. And it's pretty small. You can see it in the picture. Now, what you don't see in the picture is the ginormous power brick that this Thunderbolt hub requires.
Yeah. That is so hilarious with all these hubs. Like the hub itself is really tiny and sexy looking. And then it's got this power brick that literally is like the size of a brick.
Yeah. Even my TS4 that I'm talking to you through right now, enormous power brick. But all that set up. And of course I got my super drive there for DVDs, and it's all set up and running, and it's in a cabinet, but it generates basically no heat. So I'm not worried about, anything cooking. The old Mac Mini was in there with spinning hard drives. So I, as part of this, retired the last spinning hard drives I had in service that were hooked up to this Mac Mini previously. So all SSD, all Thunderbolt, USB-C, all nice and neat. And I'm really happy with it.
It's a really nice looking setup. I just cannot get excited about Plex. I don't watch enough media for it to matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't, I don't use it the way Casey does, where that's basically TV in the List household. But I wanted a place to put my Apple videos that was not just a Finder folder. And, eventually, when it's all organized and nice, I'll be able to go through there and find what I'm looking for. And that is exciting to me, even though I have a mountain of work to make it happen. So it's not becoming TV for me. I'm not radically changing the way I consume media, but it's going to be in addition to those other things.
I have to laugh a little bit, though, because back in the day, over 10 years ago, I had set up something like that with a Drobo so we could get all the Barbie princess movies on it for my girls, right? Back in the day, when the kids are little, they watch TV. They'll watch the same movie 100 times.
Yes, they will.
And my kids are past that. So when I saw this, I was thinking, Steven's going to have a great, I don't know, whatever, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collection or something on it. And then he gets on the show. He's like, well, I got all my Apple videos on.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely have. So the Plex SSD also houses the legacy iTunes account, which has basically just full of purchased movies and TV shows. And we have a lot of that stuff, and they do still watch stuff, even though mine are a little bit older now. They still watch things repeatedly. But the difference is my kids are growing up squarely in the streaming era, and your kids were just before it, I think. Or at least the way that it is now, right? So if my kids want to watch a Pixar movie, they don't even go to the iTunes library. They just go to Disney Plus, because I pay for Disney Plus and it all streams there. So that is, I think, changed pretty rapidly for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's even in my own habits. If I want to watch the Star Wars thing, I watch it on Disney Plus, even though I have it. I've paid for it, and but I don't watch enough to justify setting up a Plex server. But I'm glad you did it, because we need one of us to be kind of deep in this media stuff, because it comes up on the show occasionally. Well, my the thing I'm playing with this month is, of course, the modern typewriter. But there is one other thing that I just bought. I wanted to share, which I don't know if the audience will have any respect for me after I share publicly that I bought this thing. The guy who wrote the book called Paperless, but there's a company called Ugmonk, and last year I got some of their what they call analog cards. They're just index cards you can write your tasks on. And the people in the labs know all about this. I've made videos for them about it, but I still use OmniFocus, but I like to put the stuff I'm doing that day on an index card and put it in front of me. And I find that it takes very little time to do that, but having it on the card kind of makes it more likely that I'll do the stuff that's on the card. And so I found it actually really a useful practice, these analog cards. Well, they just announced a new product called Analog Weekly Cards. And the weekly cards are just what it sounds like. It's like two index cards on their side, so it's kind of wider than it's tall, but it's got a little annotation for 5 days and 2 weekend days. And just at the beginning of the week, I can say Tuesday, 1600 record Mac power users, and Wednesday, 1100 Mac Sparky Labs thing. And, so I just put my big ticket items for the week on it, and it's sitting there in front of me all week on this piece of paper. And I have calendars. I have Fantastical. I've got Apple Watches. I got iPads. I got all this stuff, guys. I don't need this. But having it just in front of me in paper actually does kind of help me kind of keep on track. So there you go. Sparky has an analog side to him.
No, I get it. I mean, I use a paper notebook for similar things. And I will say everything on this Ugmonk website is beautiful. And everything they do is extremely high quality and thoughtful. And I don't know if I actually own any of this stuff. I don't think I've bought anything from them ever. But I love the way all of it looks and works. And I think that they do really good work.
Jeff Sheldon is the guy behind it. Mm-hmm. And he was a guest on the Focused podcast, Focused 121. I'll put a link in the show notes. And Jeff is exactly what you think he would be looking at his products. Just a super thoughtful, mindful guy, thinks about how this stuff can work and not be a distraction. I really like him. And so I like supporting him. And this isn't, I didn't get any of this stuff free. I pay Jeff for everything I get from him. But I just think it's kind of nice. And these little cards too. I mean, I know several Labs members after I started talking about bought them, and they like them too. It's a nice complement to a digital system. I think Jeff sells it as like, this could be your whole task system. You just fill them out and then you have like cards to carry things over. And I think it quickly becomes kind of tedious for me, at least. I like having the bank of a digital task system. But when I get to the operational part of it, the what am I going to do today thing, writing them down on the card really helps. All right, we're the Mac Power Users. You can find us at relay.fm/MPU. Don't forget, next week's episode is dropping early when Steven is hot off the heels of being inside the Apple phone event. I can't wait to hear what he reports and what he tells us. Thank you to our sponsors today, TextExpander, SaneBox, ZocDoc, and Electric. For the more power users today, I'm going into the lion's den with Steven to talk about 3D printers. We'll see how that goes. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.